Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. The Tenpenny Files has daily conversations with documentary filmmakers and independent thinkers who challenge the mainstream messaging. We cover a wide range of topics, so there's something here for everyone, from government and politics to travel to food, fitness, to biblical and faith principles that we address at least once a week. My goal is to introduce you to topics you've never heard of before or topics that you want to know more about but didn't know where to begin. So let our authors and our guests on this show to show you the way through the massive amounts of research that they've put together. Join me here every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Tenpenny Files, when we hear from voices that have been ignored, silenced, or censored, but truly have something important to say. But before we begin today's episode, I want to invite everyone to become a Tenpenny Prime member. You get exclusive content, you get deals, you get special treatment because you support us. To find out more about what the membership is all about, go to primemembership.drtenpenny.com, primemembership.drtenpenny.com, and hopefully you will join us and support our work. And one last thing, thank you for all of the regular listeners who've been joining us here for so many months. You're much appreciated, and every day we continue to grow. So welcome to all of the new listeners and to the new watchers. We're so glad you're here. So now let's get started. Today, we're doing a part 2 conversation with author, researcher, and child advocate dedicated to exposing the dark side of a medically established procedure called ultrasound. Jeanice Barcelo and has an important new book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound. It's the only book that exposes the dangers of what's happening to your unborn child. Now, just to tell you how important this book is to me, which I have read, and how important this conversation is to you. Jeanice is the only author I've had on this show that I've had back for a 2-part interview, because this is a hefty book. It's like 400 and some pages. It has over 1,800 documented references in it, lots of quotes, lots of information. So she's the only person so far on this show that I brought her back for a 2nd-part interview to let you know about what's going on. So Jeanice, welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm so grateful to have you back here today.
I'm so grateful to you for having me back, Dr. T. Thank you very much for your heart and your willingness to help get this information out to people.
But when I first saw it, when I first saw the title, I mean, it was like, I got to have her on the show. And for those listeners who are listening today who maybe didn't hear part of your story and how you got interested in doing this research on our first episode, which you can find by going to any of your podcast platforms, or you can go to the Tenpenny Files and hover over the podcast tab. I'm sorry, go to drtenpenny.com, drtenpenny.com, hover over the podcast tab. There's a drop down window that you can scroll down where it says all podcasts. You can watch part 1 of this show. But for those who didn't see it the first time, why don't you tell the listeners how you got interested in this research and how long it took you to write this book?
Very briefly, I became interested based on my own birth experiences and the extensive amount of birth trauma that I've lived through. And I wrote my first book about birth trauma, and I was going to include a chapter on prenatal care. I knew that the protocols of prenatal care were not good, and I knew ultrasound was a problem. So I was going to include a little blip about ultrasound, but I dived into this rabbit hole that had no bottom. And I realized I needed to write another book about ultrasound, something I had no knowledge about prior. I didn't even know it was radiation. I was told it was just sound waves, and I believed that. But my research took me very deep, 5 years, working closely with a librarian who was able to get me studies that are not available on the internet unless you have buku bucks to pay $50 for each, study. It took me a very long time to understand this technology, to put this stuff together in a way that is coherent and that people could understand how extremely damaging ultrasound is. And that I honestly believe it is the driving force behind autism and behind a variety of very severe problems that we're seeing in babies and children today, the likes of which our children have never been this sick. You know, we have more than half of American children with a chronic disease. Over 50% have a
Yeah,
chronic disease, and this is not normal. We have irradiated our babies, not knowingly, of course. You know, we don't know. We believe what we're being told, so we think ultrasound is safe, but it is radiation, and it is causing massive, massive harm. And this is something people need to become aware of, because the medical establishment, the people at the top, have kept it under wraps for a very long time. My book came out in 2018, and it was pretty much immediately censored. And I was censored. I got kicked off of every social media site imaginable, and, you know, Amazon banned the book. It's now back up on Amazon, amazingly, over the last 2 or 3 months. But it was banned. All my books were banned, and it's been hard to reach people with the information because of the censorship. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity here, because I know you're on the same page and you reach a good number of people, and we can help the children this way by overstepping their attempts to block the truth.
yeah, absolutely. The censorship is across the board in so many different areas. It's in it's in vaccines, it's in politics, it's in anything that you can think about that is not mainstream. In fact, they've tried to pass laws, and they're still gonna. They're already fast doing it in Canada, and they're trying to do it here in the U.S. That if you say anything that is non-mainstream, even if you talk about politics or travel or taking care of your yard or raising vegetables, if it's non-mainstream, that there's going to be punishment for that. So thank you for what you've done. You know, in your book, The Prenatal Ultrasound, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound, you cite the work from the 1980s done by Dr. Doreen Lebskin. I think that's how you pronounce her.
Libeskind, I think. Yeah,
Skin, yeah.
yeah.
Attending radiologist at Beth Israel Medical Center and head cardiac nuclear medicine of St. Francis Hospital in New York. And I want to just quote just a sentence that you have from a study that she did here, and have you then make a comment about it. This is the quote from the study. Ultrasound damage is similar to X-ray damage. When the results are extrapolated to a typical clinical session, they indicate the equivalent of the risk of 250 chest X-rays. Damage was permanent, heritable through cell division, demonstrating that ultrasound exposure could conceivably affect many human generations. That is so ominous, and it's been known since the 1980s, but no one seems to be taking any action on this. Why hasn't anything been done to change this routine, or at least to warn pregnant women that this may cause damage to their babies?
Well, I think they're not being warned because the medical establishment wants to hold on to their ability to peer into the womb. They call it fetal surveillance. I'm not sure what they think they're going to gain from constantly irradiating babies, but they don't want to lose that. They were very upset when Rosalie Bartel blew the whistle on X-rays during pregnancy, and they had to stop doing the X-rays. So they replaced X-rays with ultrasound, and then basically lied and said it's not radiation, but it is. It's listed on the FDA's website under radiation emitting products, where they explain that it is non-ionizing radiation. They will tell you that non-ionizing radiation is safe. And I'm here to tell you that there are literally tens of thousands of studies indicating that non-ionizing radiation is extremely harmful, not just to human bodies and especially human babies, but to other living beings. And we just have to see that we haven't been told the truth. And I don't understand the minds of the people that would deliberately lie about this, but there has been a deliberate attempt to silence me, even to mimic my work. You know, somebody calling herself a Midwestern doctor on Substack completely plagiarized my ultrasound book, but twisted things around right, to fit an agenda. So there are people that do not want the public understanding this. They want to keep going. But it's hurting babies. It's hurting parents, right? You cannot expose a mother or a father to radiation without harming their eggs and their sperm. Okay.
When we're talking about a fetus, we're talking about two cells that come together, an egg and a sperm, and then double, and then double, and then double, and then double rapidly to where they, like at 12 weeks, they were just at a developmental thing that things are just it's like God's blueprint, and the cells are just following this blueprint and going in a particular order, and then we hit it and hit it and hit it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the really damaging effects that happens with ultrasound. Let's talk about the effects on bones.
Okay, let's do that. I want to back up for just a minute because the quote that you gave that you thought was from Dr. Doreen Liebeskind, I want to give credit to Jim West because that's actually a quote from Jim West's research, and he's written quite a bit about Chinese studies on ultrasound where they've totally shown the damage being done by the technology. So Jim was actually quoting from Doreen's research. Doreen found that the damage from one exposure was the same damage as 89 rads of ionizing radiation, which is the equivalent of being exposed to 250 X-rays. So let that sink in. One single exposure to ultrasound can do the same genetic damage as 250 chest X-rays. All right, that's a whopping dangerous technology, especially because when you damage a baby genetically, or you damage the eggs of a woman of childbearing age, you're going to have generations of genetically damaged children. And Doreen's research indicated it goes on for at least 10 generations and beyond. Okay, so it's very, very damaging. With respect to the bones, we are dealing with radiation, okay? The bones absorb radiation heat. Radiation cooks things. Microwave radiation cooks things. We know this. We have microwave ovens and we put our food, and our food cooks. Our water boils, okay? This is the same, all right? Ultrasound really creates extreme heating. And this is even more extreme with Doppler fetal heart monitors, which are also ultrasonic. So the bones are absorbing this heat. And I want, especially, the whole body, if it's exposed, is going to absorb it, but the bones really absorb the heat. And if you are pointing, let's say you're doing a vaginal ultrasound, okay, and you put that beam right on the baby's head, toward the end of pregnancy. Now we have the bones completely heated up, okay, and literally burning the brain matter that's closest to bones. And we have several studies indicating that the brains of children are shrinking. They're being cooked, they're shriveling up like bacon. And I'm not making this up. Okay, this is all documented in my book. And so we're going to see children with brain damage just because of the heat. And I want people to keep in mind that the medical establishment is telling pregnant women not to get in hot tubs, not to take too hot baths because the heat can cause birth defects. And here they are exposing developing babies to a technology that causes such extreme heating. For example, in the liquids, in the cerebral spinal fluid that fills every ventricle of the brain and the nervous system, the liquid inside of that fluid heats up. It creates bubbles. When you put water in a microwave, it heats up, it boils. Well, that's happening in the cerebral spinal fluid. It's happening in the amniotic fluid. It's happening in the blood of the children. And these bubbles implode, okay? You know how boiling bubbles explode? These bubbles implode at the rate of 500 miles per second, fatally damaging all the cells in the area. It's localized, but fatally damaging all the cells in the area. And of course, creating damage. I have a very short video of it destroying cells. It's like a 30-second video. Can I share that here so people can get a visual of what it's doing to the cells?
You can show it, but remember, this is on a podcast, they're not going to see it, but you
Oh, okay, never
can,
mind. Because
okay.
you can see the cells literally the bubbles start to expand and contract and expand and contract and then expand and then suddenly, boom, right? And then everything around that explosion, that implosion, is going to be affected. They're calling this cavitation, ultrasonic cavitation, and it is extremely damaging. So this is what we need to know. The heat is damaging. It's creating birth defects. We've got many, many children, for example, being born with deformed bones, microcephaly, where the bones have totally melted or not formed, because ultrasound does melt bone. We have children with Treacher-Collins syndrome, right? All the bones in their face, their teeth, um, their whole face becomes deformed where the bones are. I have images of this in my book so people can see what the radiation heat and the cavitation is actually doing to the bones. And we have evidence of people, who've taken remedies to try to heal the damage, experiencing their bones as feeling as if their bones are empty. And when I did an interview with Children's Health Defense with Polly Tommy, yeah, um, one of her people that was doing the interview with her had a child. She said the baby felt like its bones were totally lighter than my other children. And that's because the ultrasound is destroying the bones of these children. And it's,
Does the duration of exposure make a difference? Or
yeah,
is
because you're going to have more heat.
so if it's an ultrasound that they spend like 2 minutes doing as opposed to one that they spend like 10 minutes doing, is the damage compounded with the long ultrasounds?
Mhm. It's going to be worse if the heating gets worse, obviously, but you have to remember Doreen Libeskine's research, okay? An X-ray is that quick and it's still doing genetic damage and other forms of damage. Okay, so even if it's that quick, it's the same level of genetic damage as 250 X-rays. So
You mentioned that the hyperthermia and the heating up is causes damage to the bones. What else does the hyperthermia do just to pregnancy overall?
what I would say is, and I also have a video of this, what it's doing when you put an egg in water and expose the egg to ultrasound. You can watch, the shell remains intact, but the yolk completely, I got to show you this because it's amazing. The yolk completely becomes deformed and then melts and goes away. So if we have children being born with the outer shell looking okay, what we're not knowing yet is that their internal system has been cooked by the radiation heat, and by the radiation force. There's going to be internal damage in the same way that microwaves are said to cook from the inside out. So this is kind of insidious because we don't see it.
Mm.
And a good example of this is infertility, which I mentioned, I think, on our first talk, is that these children, many of them, are being born sterile because of the radiation exposure. And I can go into detail about what's happening to the reproductive system because of this technology. But we don't know that they're sterile for 15 or 20 years when they try to reproduce, and then they find out that they can't. You see, so radiation damage doesn't always make itself visible right away. but
So,
it's there.
so what effects do ultrasound have on hearing?
Good question. Excellent question. Okay, let me first start this by saying something that a lot of people can relate to. We have a country that has at least 50 million people experiencing tinnitus, what the medical establishment calls tinnitus. What if I told you that people are hearing ultrasound? That's what they're hearing
Wow.
24/7. And if I told you that all of the wireless grid is running frequencies in the ultrasonic range, then we would understand that what people are hearing is coming from the wireless devices in their home and from the cell towers, all of which are blasting ultrasonic frequencies into our airspace 24/7. And airborne ultrasound creates very physical damage. Like I watched what happened to my cat the same week that I started, my ears were howling from the ultrasound after they activated 5G. I had to get out of that place within a week to save my life and my cat's life, because my cat, the same time this was happening to me, and my heart was going crazy, my cat developed neurological problems, started falling. He couldn't run. His head is totally tilted to the left. Now his body is pulling toward the left. Ultrasound is, sonic weapons are the most damaging. Let me put it that way. They are the most damaging. So we know that in the womb, ultrasound has been recorded at 120 decibels, which is
Wow.
the same as being in a subway when the trains are coming in, or standing next to a chainsaw when it's in motion. So it's extremely loud for the baby and terrifying. I have evidence in my book to indicate the babies are actually dissociating in the womb, meaning they're leaving their bodies. I've got a story in there from a 2.5-year-old saying there was thunder in the womb and it was very loud and I was very afraid and I had to get out from the thunder. I had to get away from the thunder, and so I went up in the clouds. And then the thunder went away. And this is a baby who's leaving the body. Literally, it's called dissociation, to go out of the body so that the soul can live and go back to the body when this extreme trauma is over. Okay, so we know it's extremely loud. I know it's causing hearing damage. And this is why we have so many babies. This is why they're checking all the babies now for hearing. Okay, almost every baby that's coming in is being tested for their hearing, because they're not going to tell you it's the ultrasound that's causing the hearing problems, but it is. And we also know autistic children hear it. They hear it very clearly, which is why they're constantly going like this, why they have to have noise canceling headphones in order to calm down, because they're hearing this very, very, let me say it this way, these sounds are alien to the earth. These frequencies are not meant to be on the earth. And they're extremely traumatizing and harmful to the children, especially, but also to us, because we're hearing this. Some people can hear the microwave. Some people hear a hiss or a knocking, okay? Knock, 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 or a hiss, 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 hiss. These are people that can hear the frequencies. The ultrasound is more like a chronic, high-pitched, mosquito-like tortured screech, basically, that can get louder. It goes up and down as they're mucking about with the frequencies that are
Wow.
coming off the grid. So it's intensifying for all of us as the 5G frequencies come online, because these are very high frequencies, extremely in the millimeter range. And yeah, so the hearing is very important, the damage it's doing to the ears. And I'll say this, the bones are crystalline in nature. We have little little crystals in our ears too, which begin to vibrate and respond. Our bones begin to vibrate and respond to these frequencies that they're not meant to be exposed to. And everything is morphing and contracting and, pulling, and then eventually the cells are just blown.
I think it makes me think about, right. I mean, prenatally now we're giving pregnant women at least 20 different or at least 5 different vaccines while they're pregnant. And then we give the hepatitis B and vitamin K right after birth. We give, and now RSV right after birth. And it makes me think about, because they, do the fetal monitoring during labor. They've got, they're pummeling this baby with this ultrasound from the fetal monitor while they are going through the birth canal, and they're watching for D cells and all these different things. And then right after that, when the blood-brain barrier is open and the skull's open, they inject with all these chemicals. It's just like what we do to newborns. It's amazing that any baby survives it at all, really.
It really is. It's the strength of the human spirit and the strength of God, allowing us to live through this, because it's an incredibly abusive and damaging to us and our children. So yes, we need to see this. We need to understand that technology is causing such serious harm.
Yeah, and I want this to just really sink into the listeners to understand that this is another area of healthcare that we've been lied to. We've been lied about, that this is just a little nice little wave that just shows up things. So I'm going to let that sink into everybody right now while we take a quick break. So hold that thought, Jeanice. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors at AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Talk Radio plays the Tenpenny Files on the iHeartRadio network daily, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then at 8 p.m. at night, we post it on all of our social media platforms. You can also go to AmericaOutloud.news and listen through their media player. So if you've missed any of these great conversations, you can follow up by putting the Tenpenny Files into Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and on many of my platforms at drtenpenny.com, where you can hover over the podcast tab and find it. We also post these on X, Instagram, Rumble, and now we have a new YouTube page. We have a YouTube page. We'll see how long the powers that be allow the Tenpenny Files to be up there, even though we're posting great conversations like this. We'll see, but please go to our YouTube channel and like it and promote it so that we can get ahead of their curve. We've got some great messages coming up from our sponsors. Please listen closely. If you like what they have to say, please support these sponsors, because they're the ones that keep us on the air, and they support AmericaOutloud.news. Sit tight. We'll be right back with more with Jeanice Barcelo and her important book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound. Don't go away, anybody. We'll be right back. Zeolite is a detox spray. We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use, and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water, because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out. The heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to drtenpenny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, only when the government bows to the people will America become great again. This is Malcolm Out Loud here. Join me in pushing back against censorship, my fellow Americans. Right at the top of AmericaOutloud.news are the words, many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news, liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're so glad that you're with us here today, that we're talking to Jeanice Barcelo with her very, very important book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound. It's the only book that really exposes the damage of ultrasound technologies to the unborn. Let me tell you just a little bit more about today's guest. Jeanice Barcelo is an author, educator, researcher, and child advocate dedicated to exposing the dark side of the medical establishment, especially when it concerns treatment of infants and pregnancy and what happens during birth. She offers courses on her courses, a Substack, other books, and access to her webinars, which can be found through her website at
A New Earth.
A New Earth. Yeah, I spelled that incorrectly. birthofannewearth.com. Birthofannewearth, all one together.com. Jeanice, thanks so much for joining us here for a second interview that we're having about the importance of ultrasound and the importance of all your work. You know, we mentioned a little bit before the break about baby monitors and when they're monitoring babies while they're going through the birth canal, they're monitoring, for decelerations. And then there's also baby monitors that they use by the cribs, that there's even after they're born, they're still pummeling babies with baby monitor ultrasounds. Talk to us a bit about the use of baby monitors.
Okay, so during hospital birth, what they're doing is using fetal heart monitors, claiming that they need to have these to listen to the baby's heart rate when, a basic wooden fetoscope worked for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. Suddenly they need ultrasound to listen to the baby's heart rate. And of course, this is extremely damaging for some of the reasons we just talked about and much more. This is a very extended amount of ultrasound that they're exposing the babies to and the mother's eggs. And there's going to be damage to both the eggs and the baby, okay, from that kind of extensive exposure. Baby monitors that they're putting next to the babies and that parents are having next to the babies are emitting massive amounts of microwave radiation. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, who is one of the few doctors who is onto this issue and is helping autistic children and their families, but will not work with parents unless they're willing to get rid of their wireless devices, because he knows that this is the core of the problem. Okay, he made a comment about baby monitors that they will destroy the baby's brain early on. And he's correct that that's exactly what is happening. As I said before, the brain is being cooked by the radiation. It is shriveling up like bacon and is part of the reason we have 16-year-old children with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. It's getting younger and younger and younger because of the extensive radiation exposure that these children have endured. If they live past 30, I think it's actually going to be a miracle because of the amount of radiation. This is, chronic 24/7 radiation exposure, and most parents are not aware. When you look at a graph of the different technologies, and I have several of these, you could see that the baby monitors are emitting the highest level.
Wow.
Of all the technologies. Why
Wow.
is that? Now, that's very interesting, something we should think about. And how did we exist for centuries without this technology and care for our babies perfectly well, and our babies were healthy and okay, right? We've been sort of bamboozled and tricked into thinking this technology is useful and beneficial. And on the contrary, it is causing massive harm. The radiation needs to stop.
We've talked a lot about the bones and the skull and the brains,
Yeah.
and you said that the brains are getting smaller. Is is it the heating that's leading to microcephaly, which is smaller heads?
Yes, in part. Some babies will respond with macrocephaly, like they'll build an extra big body or head around them to try to build a stronger barrier from the radiation. So different bodies respond differently. We do know for sure that ultrasound is causing fetal growth restriction. I also believe it's responsible for the microcephaly, okay? And the FDA knows this. I said this in our last talk. The FDA has known that ultrasound causes fetal growth retardation since the early 1990s. They did their own study on this, and they found, in a 2,000 children in Denver, they found it causes low birth weight and fetal growth restriction. They used to say it what it is. It's fetal growth retardation caused by its radiation-induced fetal growth retardation. So the bones are not developing properly because they're absorbing most of the radiation heat. The children are coming in very small, low birth weight. I'll just give you a brief thing. When I talked about this on Facebook in 2018, a lot of women were saying their babies have low birth weight, and I started posting. Here's 8, 10 studies showing that ultrasound is causing the low birth weight. Well, this is supposed to be a home birth group, okay? First, they stopped people from commenting, whoever the administrators were. Then they then they deleted the comment entirely. Then they deleted my Facebook account.
Oh, wow. Well, censorship is a real thing, like we talked about. And it's one of the reasons why I'm having people like you on the show that brings out, consolidated research. I mean, this book, people, has over 1,800 reference researches in there. So it's not just her opinion. And the
No.
1,800 references are from various industries, across science and health and medicine and engineering and places like that she's done all of this work to pull it all together. And nobody wants people to know this because it impacts revenues. And I think you said in our first show that there have not been any studies at all that have shown that if you compare two populations, one population that the babies get repeated ultrasounds, and the other population where they get one or none, that there's no benefit at all to more
There's
ultrasounds.
no benefit to the fetal heart monitors, and there's no benefit to the scans. This has been repeatedly documented over and over and over again. And they have done studies where, comparing animal studies, for example, those that are repeatedly irradiated and those that are not, and showing the difference in the quality of the offspring. Okay. And it's a big difference. It's a big difference. Those that are not irradiated are, of course, going to be healthier and doing much better than those that have been repeatedly irradiated, especially. But even one exposure, this is what I want to get across, even very brief, has the potential to cause serious genetic harm. And we need to understand that and say, no, you will not expose my eggs, my body, or my baby to this technology. And no, I'm not going to use wireless devices. I'm going to get my technology wired.
Do you think that all of these ultrasounds are leading to genetic disruptions that we label as birth defects, but they really are caused by the radiation that's happening with these ultrasounds?
What they're doing is they're saying that these children have de novo genetic mutations. Okay, de novo means new. It means these are genetic mutations that never appeared in the family line before and are showing up in the children that have them. And they say that these are spontaneous. They're spontaneous genetic mutations. And I'm saying, no, they're not. They're radiation-induced genetic mutations. There's nothing spontaneous about this. This is happening because of the radiation. And it's happening in one of two ways. Either there's early exposure to ultrasound in the womb, especially the first 12 weeks. You were talking about the rapid cell division. If one cell is genetically damaged and that cell divides and multiplies, you're going to have a genetically damaged kid, okay? And there's a lot of them right now. So that's one way, is through especially early ultrasound exposure before 12 weeks. The other way is through genetically damaged sperm or egg. of which there are many because the parents are being chronically exposed to radiation. So even though they don't have genetic problems, their children are going to have genetic problems because their sperm and their egg have been genetically damaged from the radiation exposure. So we're going to see this more and more as the generations go on. We're going to see more genetic damage. And unless we stop immediately, I don't know the outcome of this, Sherri, because we've already had several generations of genetic damage. So, and we have very, very sick children.
You know, when I first started getting involved with researching problems associated with vaccines, the incidence of autism was about 1 in 150 kids, and we thought that was jaw-dropping. And now it's 1 in 30, and in California, it's 1 in 12. So I think that a lot of the ultrasounds that weaken the immune system by causing these genetic damages, and then you inject them with all these poisons. You take a damaged body and then you poison it. Is it any wonder that their brains don't work, right?
Exactly. And you can see also there's many graphs that show it was 1 in 10,000 children that had autism in 1970. This is when they brought ultrasound in. Okay, and then you watch the graph from 1970 to 2025, and it just keeps going. Like you said, 1 in 12 boys in California, 1 in 12 boys in California has autism. Obviously, something has radically changed from 1970 when we were not using this technology.
Do you think that, you and I have had a couple of offline conversations about this, that it's just what physicians are taught. It's like what they're taught about vaccines, that they're just safe and effective and necessary, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And it's a multi-generational indoctrination. And I think the same thing happens with ultrasounds. And not only are doctors indoctrinated that this is it's just a little sound wave that we get to see the outline of the baby, but the pregnant women are indoctrinated with the same thought process too. And they feel like by getting these ultrasounds that somehow they're getting cared for because they're monitoring their baby, and they don't understand what they're doing is frying them. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you back on for a second interview, to really hit that home for people.
Yes, they are. The children are being fried. It's not that parents are trying to fry their children,
Right.
but that is what's happening. We've got, in terms of genetic damage, DNA single and double strand breaks, chromosome breakage, chromosome fusions, uncoiling of the DNA, okay, complete necrosis of the cells, chromosome rearrangements, duplications and omissions of whole organs, deformities and abnormalities, visible mutation in offspring, and radiation-induced genetic damage that multiplies during cell division. Okay, I want people to understand that they have documented chromosome aberrations at 8.2 watts per centimeter squared, microwatts per centimeter squared. 8.2, they've documented the chromosome aberrations from the technology, and the DNA is shearing. All right, meanwhile, the babies are being exposed to 720 microwatts per centimeter squared.
Wow.
Okay, and in 1976, the federal government said anything between 1 and 15 microwatts per centimeter squared should be considered a health hazard. And they're exposing babies to 720 or more. What is going on that we are being told that this is safe when even their own documentation has said that it's not? And, with the FDA doing their own study and finding the fetal growth retardation and the low birth weight, why then did they turn around and raise the allowable output limits on the machines? 8-fold, 8 to 15-fold, depending on which research you look at. And this is extreme, like, oh my God, no wonder the children are becoming intellectually less capable. That's the gentlest way to say it, as the decades roll on, because their brains are being damaged. And there's multiple ways that it's happening, that this brain damage is happening. And no wonder we have all of this infertility when we know that they're using ultrasound to create, what's it called? When if they want men to stop producing sperm, all they have to do is 2 15-minute blasts to the adult male scrotum, and the sperm production will stop for a minimum of 6 months.
Wow.
Okay? And they're
Wow.
using it. They're using it for that express purpose, because contraception, that's the word I'm looking for. They're using it as a form of male contraception. They know that it stops sperm production. What do we think is happening to the developing testes of our baby boys? What do we think is happening to the developing ovaries of our baby girls? The list of, of fertility damage, let me just read this to you. Morphological changes to ovarian and testicular tissue, meaning there's deformations. And we're seeing this a lot in the testicles, especially descended testicles or deformations, okay, in the genitals. Sperm cell damage, chromosomal sperm cell damage. All right, deleterious effects on the menstrual cycle. It induces premature ovulation, problems with embryo implantation, permanently halts sperm production. It kills the existing sperm in the testes and stops the development of additional sperm. Okay, it decreases in ovulation rates and cumulative pregnancy rates in humans. It increases stillbirth. It increases fetal death. It increases miscarriage. It increases low birth weight and fetal growth retardation. It's increasing brain damage. I could go on. You know, in the first chapter of my book, I give a very, 2 paragraphs of intense information of everything this technology has been shown to cause. And yet here we are being told it's safe, like we're being told the vaccines are safe. I'm sorry, but it's not true.
Not true. And that's the whole purpose of our dual conversation here, is to get this to, really hammer this home with mothers. And grandmothers, are hearing about this. So if you hear this, listen to this podcast, regardless of what platform you're on, please like and share this and get this information out exponentially, because
Please download it onto your devices, so that if they do censor you or try to block people from viewing it, other people will still have it and it can continue to be shown.
we store all of our podcasts, so they never delete it from our platform. So,
okay, good. Right on.
So it's never deleted from that platform. Now they may delete it from Spotify or Pandora, or wherever they delete stuff from, but on drtenpenny.com, that's our own platform, so it doesn't get deleted there. But it's really important to share this information, because, and then the next step is what to do with this. I mean, once you get this like in your face and your doctor's going, okay, so next Thursday we'll schedule you for an ultrasound, people can just say no, thank you. What do
you have to say no, thank you. You have to say no strongly sometimes, because the pressure from the OBs can be very enormous. So women, it would be great to have my book in your hand, okay? Seriously, because if they're going to put pressure on you, you want to say, look, I've got this documentation here. Look what it says this technology can do to my baby. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let that happen. If you're going to insist on it, I have to find another care provider.
And I would honestly say that, like you said, in the very first part of the book, in the first chapter, I mean, it's a thick book. People probably are not going to carry around this 500-page book with them where they go. But you can make a photocopy of the cover. You can go to the page that has all of the documented things that Jeanice has put in there about the things that it can cause. And you can make a copy of that page, and you can say, this is the book This is a copy of the page of the book of all the problems that this is causing. And this is why I'm saying no. Now, if you want to get the book, it's available on Amazon. You can go directly to Amazon. You can go to Jeanice's website and get the book. You can go to our website at bookstore.drtenpenny.com and get the book. But there's lots of, but if you just show them, I'm not being obstinate. I read this information in this book, and you have a copy of the cover of the book. You have a copy of the page that lists all the different problems that it can cause. And if they like scoff at it, say, well, this is a 500-page book with more than 1,800 documented footnotes and references from all kinds of medical journals. You might even make a couple of copies of a few of those pages in the back of the book, staple it together, and that will definitely fit into your purse that you can carry with you or in your backpack when you go to your doctor's appointments for sure. You know, Jeanice, we've only got, just a few minutes left on the show here today, and you've got so much information and so much important information to share. I want you to take the last couple of minutes we have and really tell people what they should do if their doctors are really pressuring them and what they can do instead.
Okay. I really would encourage that if the doctor is going to insist that you do say, I have to leave the practice and find another care provider because I don't want to do this to myself or my baby. It's never good to get into a power struggle with these people because they have been known to take children away from their parents for saying no to things like vaccination. Okay. We don't want that to happen to you or your baby. So you just want to very politely say, I'm sorry, I have the facts and I don't want to do this to my baby, and I'll go find a care provider that's okay with it and go and do that. I would recommend to people to consider home birth for this very reason, to find a midwife, ideally a certified professional midwife. I think I said this last time, because the nurse midwives are more medically oriented. So if you find a certified nurse midwife, for example, at Ancient Art Midwifery here in the United States, there's a nice website, and they train certified professional midwives who are trained to do home birth and to respect your knowledge, your capacity to make decisions for your birth. Okay, and we'll stand by with you and support you in your decision to protect yourself and your children. So I know home birth is a big leap for a lot of people, and that's because most of us were born in hospitals, and we have a tendency to give birth the way that we were born. But we don't want to do that, okay? Because the way we were born harmed us, and we want to break the cycle. In other words, we don't want any more traumatic repetition and the same damage, or it escalates with every generation, the birth trauma. So we want to break the cycle by educating ourselves, by loving ourselves enough to educate and protect, to say, I am going to protect myself. I am going to protect my baby, and I'm going to do what I need to do to prepare for a home birth. And that's the gentlest way to bring a child into this world without worrying about they're going to impose this procedure and this procedure and this test and that technology. And all of it has the very real potential to cause harm. Between my three books, especially the first two, I mean, you're going to learn a lot about birth and be able to protect yourself from things that are harmful once you have this education, even though it's hard. It's hard for us to say, oh my God, this is like something I've allowed to happen to my children. I had no idea how harmful it is. And it's especially hard when you're in my position with dead babies. I have a string of dead children behind me because I didn't question any of this. And I wish I would have, so that they might have lived.
There is a podcast that we did on this show on the Tenpenny Files with Emmy Robin, who is a home birth specialist. She's a Christian home birth specialist, and she talks about her whole plan is to walk people through the fear of a home birth and teach them why they should really consider home birth and to get away from all the medicalization and all the medical stuff that they do. So I just think that that's really wonderful. Tell them one more time where your website is and the courses that you provide.
My website is birthofanewearth.com. I provide a 20-week parenting program to take people through preconception, through conscious parenting. It's a whole guide about how to really get yourself to a place where you can comfortably give birth at home and feel good about it. You know, a lot of the times when we're in labor, let me quickly say this, and labor halts, it's because we're trying to process, the body's trying to process through past birth trauma. So we don't want to put drugs into the body to try to force ourselves past this. We want somebody that can support us in moving whatever's been holding there, okay, for the past several decades. And midwives can do this. Maybe the one that you mentioned would be good at doing that, helping people move through it. So, but my course also will obviously help you understand what's happened in the past, how it can affect the birth, what you can do instead, and get you to a place where your baby comes in a field of love. And that's what we want. I have courses for men because the men have been peripheried. You know, these other guys are standing in front of the room, catching the baby and, you know, making themselves very important when they're really not. They're really not important.
And
The
so that's
father is much more important.
the father is the winner, and we've got to get both families doing that. Well, Jeanice, thank you so much for spending 2 hours with me to let people know and to really, really, really understand what's happening with ultrasounds. Please like and share this show. Please get this out to as many people as you possibly can. So I want to thank you again for being here, and
Thank you again.
and to the watchers, to the people who listen, and to the people that watch, for coming to us every day. And please remember Romans 12:12, rejoice in hope, be patient in trouble, and be persistent in prayer. And we want to thank everybody for being here again. We will see you here tomorrow or the next time, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, on the Tenpenny Files. Bye, everybody. Have a great week. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.